I'm sorry, my good friends. I'll truly miss you, but I'm doing this in your honor. I'll never forget you, and maybe someday we'll be reunited again. I'll wish for your return each and every day. Never will you be forgotten from the Holy Nintendo Direct bingo card. But I can't hold on to the past forever. I'm finally ready for some Mario story again.
Lachie, you are not ready.
What? But I need a new home as a Mario RPG lover. Mario and Luigi is never coming back, and I've lost way too much money betting that they will.
No, you can't just jump in now and play the good ones right when there's hope. You must go back and go through all of it. You will not be a true Paper Mario fan until you know the suffering of the Paper Mario fandom.
Okay, if I have to. Super Mario RPG was released in 1996 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, published by Nintendo but actually developed by Square as it was at the time. It was received quite well and a sequel would shortly enter development. Initially shown at Nintendo Space World 1997 as Super Mario RPG 2, the sequel featured the 3D environments the Nintendo 64 was known for at the time, yet with a strange decision front and center. The characters, and certain background elements, were 2D. The strange concept art by Aoyama earlier in 1997 had inspired this creative new direction, explored in hopes to stray from the usual, tired and less expressive, computer-generated 3D graphics of the time. And they're not wrong, leaning in this direction gave these characters so much more personality than this. During a very lengthy development, the game's name would see a change to Super Mario Adventure, and eventually released in Japan in August 2000 as Mario Story, presumably due to legal issues with Square and Nintendo fighting like children over the use of the name Super Mario RPG. However, we would come to know the game in the West as Paper Mario, released at the tail end of the Nintendo 64's life in 2001. I've covered this game on this channel before, not in any way that'll resurface to the mortal plane ever again.
I'm gonna go to strategies and see if it tells me how to block. Wait, what did I do? Wait, what?
But my first impression was, this isn't as cool as the infinitely superior Mario & Luigi series of Mario RPG games from Alpha Dream. I'm gonna go play those instead. So now, in search of some stupid Mario stories with turn-based combat, crazy locations, and original characters, I've stumbled across the Paper Mario series. I was hesitant to jump into this series as its future was uncertain, and by that I mean it faced a greater fall-off than Overwatch 2, with its games in the dark age of Nintendo, the Wii U era, stripping these games to the most sterile, boring games you could ever imagine. My beloved Mario & Luigi series even befell a similar fate. I didn't want to get my heart broken again, jumping into a franchise that was on life support just because it had a couple of cult classics 20 years ago. But now, they're going back to the universally beloved second game in the series, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, and giving it a full remake. So I thought in preparation for the remake I'd go back and see what all the hype was about with the original, so I can then also see what all the hype is about with the sequel. Then I got cursed with the condition that I'll review the entire rest of this series after that, so f*** me, let's enjoy it while it lasts with the Nintendo 64 original, Paper Mario, that I am definitely playing on a very legitimate Nintendo 64. So Paper Mario serves as a dramatic retelling of the classic Mario vs. Bowser Save Princess Peach story. We begin at Mario's house as Mario and Luigi are invited to eat cake or some fat shit like that, where I think Luigi's L is backwards here, but before I can even finish the sentence, Peach is kidnapped by Bowser and held captive in her very own castle. Bowser then proceeds to beat the shit out of the player in an unwinnable fight to set the tone for the rest of the game. This isn't your typical Bowser. This guy is invincible and you want to kick his ass for it the entire rest of the game. This strength is in large part to the Star MacGuffin, I mean the Star Rod, which holds the ability to grant wishes, which Bowser has stolen from the Star Spirits, magical star guardians that Bowser traps and separates all across the lands. So, as you might assume, it's Mario's job to travel all over the place and search for them so they can reunite and take down Bowser. And that's kind of the story. It's nothing that special, but has a touch of magic to it with the Star Rod and spirits to add some great attention, stakes, and atmosphere to the whole thing. And the fact that Mario fails at the beginning, I don't think Mario's ever lost like that before. It makes sure you know that this is going to be a different kind of adventure, where Mario needs to seek a whole new level of power he's never had before as the everyman plumber. I'm pretty sure Mario dies from the fall he takes out of the sky. Things couldn't be more desperate, and that's pretty cool. So what genre does the gameplay follow in this instance? Well, it's kind of a blend of traditional turn-based RPG battle mechanics, mixed in with other action-adventure elements, interacting with the environments around Mario, solving puzzles, talking with NPCs, even platforming. Anytime you might think it's getting stale, bam, now you've got a f***ing Indiana Jones boulder trying to take you out. It doesn't really focus on fast-paced action all too often like your usual Mario games. It's a much more relaxed experience overall in a very fantastical setting, full of whimsy and silliness wherever you go. And I honestly really enjoyed the constant new ideas outside of combat. It was great exploring around and finding all these items and abilities to gradually build yourself up to become stronger. As for the battling itself, it had to take its time to grow on me. From the prologue to the end of chapter 1, it's very basic. And I don't think that's the worst thing. It was made during a time where RPGs weren't that popular with Western audiences, at least not to the degree that Mario was, and so they go really slow with battles and gameplay and only give you the action command at the end of the prologue, which are actual inputs from the player during battle to successfully execute attacks or blocks. But even until the end of chapter 1, the enemies are piss easy. Throughout the game there are plenty of guys to battle, from classic to original enemies, and they progressively become much more competent. There are of course basic enemies that go down in a couple of turns, some stronger mini-bosses or unskippable fights, and then a boss battle at the end of each chapter of the story, a chapter usually encompassing an adventure to retrieve a star spirit from a specific area or boss. And I loved these moments at the end of each chapter. It really bookends the whole thing, and they each have their own musical theme brimming with personality. After the end of chapter 1, there was actually a surprising amount of strategy and difficulty in the combat now, as enemies actually deal hefty damage, had weird gimmicks you had to take note of, you have a very limited number of items at 9, which is like nothing, items which you need to sustain your HP and FP, where FP allows you to execute special attacks granted with certain badges to customize your own stats and moves, alongside enabling partners to use their own special moves. All this gradually made the combat much more engaging, and I even ended up dying quite a few times before the end. Sometimes it was real bullshit though. The partners that you meet along the way are such a great part of the adventure too, where in combat you choose one to have their own turn alongside Mario, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, like Bo having a powerful slap attack that can sometimes be blocked with enemies with shells, Bombette just blowing the whole battle to shit at the cost of a lot of FP, and Goombario being a walking nerd emoji with his tattle ability. Outside of the combat, you usually get a new partner for each chapter to accompany you with some kind of ability that you need to progress through each location. They won't necessarily be a crucial part of that chapter's story, maybe they just randomly join you for the heck of it, but the best, most endearing ones usually have some motivation to be there. Sushi the fish is my favourite, born for a purpose I guess. Now I guess with all that out of the way, we can really deep dive into the details of this game, so if I've convinced any of you that this might be a cool game to try, and you don't want to get spoiled on every single chapter, then you better click away. For those of you left, maybe you've already played the game and wanted to get someone else's thoughts, maybe you didn't understand the appeal of the game, whether you've played it or not, or maybe you just don't care about anything and love me or something. In that case, let's get to the rest of the game. Starting out with the prologue. It was so boring. I had to force myself to stay with it, honestly. Mario basically wakes up from his fall, visits Goomba Village and talks to this Goomba family, including the legendary hero, Goompa, like a Goomba grandpa. Does that imply that there's only one singular Goomba grandpa in the entire world? As I explained earlier, this chapter teaches you the absolute utter basics of combat, where you can't even make a single input during combat actions to deal or block greater damage. You just take turns choosing attacks. It's great for new players who have drool leaking out of their face, but otherwise, man, it's an era I want back. It's after the prologue where we finally arrive back in Toad Town, your little hub for the adventure filled with NPCs selling and doing all kinds of things like items, beds, fortune telling, cooking, badges for like a bajillion coins that I could never fucking afford, with an underground below it all too. This place is filled with progression locked barriers designed to give you quick access around the world once you've completed their designated chapters, just in case you ever want to go back. What a confusing layout though, just for some fast travel, especially with fucking enemies all over the place, like giant blooper bosses jump scaring you, and even worse, these dark Koopa assholes that get you in a stun lock that they can use to just hit you infinitely from full health as I'm just forced to watch. God forbid I figure out how to fucking react to this thing. Where is the input? Chapter 1 finally gets things going a little bit. You're officially given your quest by the Star Spirits, and we even see a small glimpse into Peach's life as a prisoner. She meets this star kid here to grant her wish that someone would help her, named Twink. You then meet Merlin, the guy who will tell you where to go between chapters if you ever miss it, which to be fair happened to me a bit. But after that, it's just similar grasslands from before, so visually I was like, ugh, come on, let's do something interesting. We did this theme for an hour already. You journey through a castle that's like, okay, I guess. It's still a lot of teaching you to use your new partners, Koopa and Bombette, to interact with the environment. You reach the Koopa Bros at the top, a very obvious Ninja Turtle parody, and we finally see a special fight in this game with their own silly theme and a big cardboard Bowser you gotta take down before the real fight. Chapter 2, however, is where it all finally clicked for me. You set out on the K64 train to Dry Desert, where you hear all the rumors of the fabled Dry ruins. Obviously that's where Bowser would hide a star spirit, so after adventuring through some tough terrain with Power Carry, and telling this vulture dude that I'm actually Luigi, not the Mario he wants, the hunt is on. I find it really interesting that these locations are called Dry Desert and Dry Ruins, which would later become future Mario Kart tracks. This series is surprisingly important to the Mario brand as a whole. Things are pulled from here all the time. King Goomba from Mario 64 DS was pulled from here, the Star Spirits would go on to host Mario Party 5, and of course the expansion of Dry Desert and Dry Ruins into fully fledged Mario Kart tracks was a fantastic idea that I didn't even know came from this game. Once reaching the town of Dry Outpost, you have to talk to everyone to try and figure this mystery out, learning of Mouse Starfire, who established this outpost and knows where the ruins are. You stumble across this mouse who will give you info in exchange for lemons because he likes them, so if you track down the secret oasis in the giant desert and bring them to him, he'll tell you of a secret code, which is a secret order of buying 2 different items that the shopkeep will know to then lead you to the hideout of Mouse Starfire, which was the lemon mouse in the first place. So you then find the ruins, which is a great time exploring all the puzzles to progress through. Chapter 3 keeps up the pace where you explore the secrets of a haunted Boo Mansion to recruit Bo, one of the best partners with a very strong slap attack and the ability to evade enemies. It's more like she recruits you though, as the Boos test Mario to see if he can take down the terrifying Tubba Blubber you've heard so much about. I love the setup for this guy, a truly invincible beast with some kind of weakness. Even Peach hears of it as you play as her briefly to sneak around. And your first encounter with him, as he eats a guy right in front of you, is great. Eventually, following all the clues given so far, you're pretty easily led to his secret. His heart separate from his body, which you have to beat the shit out of and win. Pretty great chapter. Too bad it doesn't keep up the pace with Chapter 4 in Shy Guy's Toy Box. The intro to this chapter is just great. The whole town has been ransacked by these Shy Guy pests, and no one knows where their hideout is until you see one enter a house. Going invisible lets you see him go through a wall, and so we follow after into the toy box. But I didn't really enjoy the rest of this chapter. You basically just follow a train around, oh the track's broken, backtrack and get the thing from the town that lets you progress. The Shy Guy General was a really cool boss fight at the end of it though, with an oddly catchy theme. I love the Shy Guys themselves in this chapter too. They're just silly guys that are truly motivated by their general's words. Chapter 5 is all about getting to and exploring the treacherous Lava Island, witnessing peak animation on the way there, filled with Yoshis in Yoshi Village and a neat little musical nod to the Yoshi's Island title theme. You swim all around the place with Sushi the fish trying to find the stupid baby Yoshis that ran off to play hide and seek, and come across the reformed Raphael the Raven from Yoshi's Island that doesn't have wings and is just a giant blob. After he helps you get into the volcano, there's a bit of platforming through it that I thought was great, and quite a good boss at the end too, with a solid strength with its fire and little minion guys that you have to figure out how to best deal with. It's a simple chapter in concept, but just plain fun to navigate all the puzzles and platforming ahead, and fight plenty of new enemies in a very atmospheric setting of the lush jungle and fiery volcano. And Colorado nearly getting himself killed looking for treasure alongside you is gold. Chapter 6 had me extremely conflicted. The setting of the flower fields is beautiful, needing these seeds from previous chapters to open a magical door to these magical lands. I guess if you weren't as thorough in the other chapters and didn't collect them as you came across them, you can't really enter. I'm not really sure if you can skip getting them though. Anyways, the general process for this chapter was to have you hit a wall, need the right colored berry to progress through it, and then have you go back to find which road of like 7 would have that berry. It was really annoying. There were too few save blocks around the place that forced me to die on the way back from one of the parts and redo the whole section just because I'd fought the mini boss Lachie, who becomes your partner, which is pretty neat, and was low on health, so died to some basic ass enemy. Oh, and the enemies here, especially the boss, all the mashing needed to dodge their attacks was awful. I felt lightheaded by the end of it. It didn't help that after mashing my f***ing brains out to dodge a huge attack, he'd frequently be able to heal like 15 health, and I just have to sit there and watch. This was the only boss I legitimately hated. Luckily, Chapter 7 is like the calm before the storm, dealing with a cute little penguin town where you walk in and there's a dead guy in the room. But in a Mario game though, there's no way that guy's actually dead, and yep, he's not. Still, it was quite an enjoyably silly show, but it was on to finding the Hidden Crystal Palace next. This place is so atmospheric and mystical, especially with how the music adds to it. The palace basically consists of tricky mirror puzzles, weaving in and out of the other mirrored half of the building, and it was great. The boss was tough, but not completely stupid, and it all felt like the game was building really well to a climax. A climax it executes wonderfully in Chapter 8. It's weird I got slightly emotional seeing Toads make wishes as you head up to Bowser's castle. It's just a great scene, especially when you've spent so long in this world having a blast. It's quite a tough order to get through this castle once you make it, especially with this area with the repeating rooms that you have to memorize the pattern for through pure trial and error. And I definitely did this part with the enemy memorization properly, and whoa, it was hard. I love the sequence where you need all your partners to get across a grueling platforming section. You wouldn't have been able to complete the adventure without them. Literally, except Goombario, and the game makes sure you know that in this sequence. It's really awesome and goes back to this being an adventure unlike Mario has ever had. Needing help from a crew this size, it's just sweet. But finally, you make it to the end and begin your epic rematch against Bowser. It feels great to beat him where he got you last time finally, but of course it's not over, it's Nintendo. So after he powers up even more and your ability to disable his Star Rod doesn't work anymore, it looks pretty damn hopeless. That's where Peach and Twink come in. I've loved Peach's story throughout this game. At the start of each chapter, she's sneaking around trying to help get Mario some info in some way. At one point, she bakes a cake for Gourmet Guy in a minigame. Another time, she's on a quiz show to get a stealth umbrella, which she uses to camouflage his enemies. It's great that even in her situation, she was able to help and fight back. And all of it builds to help empower Twink one last time to help disable the Star Rod once again. And with that, it came down to me on 1 HP. All out of healing items, with one spell that could recover 5 HP, not enough to dodge even a single attack. I thought I was screwed, but his health was so low. A mere 12. I thought if I could hit enough action commands to land this power bounce to deal 7 damage, my partner could deal the last 5 damage to end it off. Here we go. Oh well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. Wait. What the fuck? And with Bowser completely throwing the match, that's Paper Mario. So, what's with the hype? It's just such a charming game. So much variety in battles, locations, puzzles, characters, secrets, humor, all of it. I love the little details, even like Luigi's diary hidden under the house, and the attention to giving Peach an actual character arc for once. It's all a very basic story structure, but it just has so much depth with it all, and I think that's why Paper Mario will always be special. It still definitely holds up over 20 years later. Can't wait to see how Thousand Year Door is the second coming of Christ and makes me literally shit my pants with gold. My expectations are perfectly in check. What do you mean?